I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Astronaut James Lovell and his Gemini 7 space twin, Frank Borman. At Cape Kennedy, the men make ready for their journey into space and their rendezvous with history. A rendezvous that will take place 185 miles above the Earth at 18,000 miles an hour. Gemini 7 and its crew are scheduled to remain in orbit for 2 weeks and to meet one day in space with 2 other astronauts in Gemini 6. This cramped and crowded capsule, barely bigger than a telephone booth, will be their home away from home. The countdown is letter perfect. Launch time draws near. The hatches are bolted shut, and the capsule, looking like a weird two-eyed monster, is readied for takeoff. As the rocket lifts off, a wife watches, hopes, prays, and the sons of a brave father follow the flight of Frank Borman in Gemini 7. These loved ones know, as no others can know, the anxious seconds, the agonizing moments until the capsule is safely in orbit. The strain, the ordeal, the sacrifice is unforgettably etched on Mrs. Borman's face. Wife and mother, she watches and waits, comforting and finding comfort in her sons. The good news comes. Gemini 7 is in orbit. America has hurdled the first obstacle to a rendezvous in space. For 8 days, the capsule circles the Earth, waiting for the launch of Gemini 6 with its crew of Walter Schirra and Thomas Stafford. Now there begins a delicate 1,400-mile celestial chase. With command pilot Schirra at the controls, the Gemini 6 slowly closes the gap. 100 miles, 50, 10, 5, 1. Schirra can see Gemini 7 now. The 2 capsules are coming closer, ever closer. They are less than 100 feet apart. And finally, they rendezvous, nose to nose, less than 6 feet apart. Remarkable motion pictures taken from Gemini 6 during the rendezvous document the spectacular meeting in space. Although Gemini 7 seems almost to be standing still, the spacecraft is actually circling the Earth 185 miles high at 18,000 miles an hour. During the rendezvous, Gemini 6 radios to the ground, complaining, There seems to be a lot of traffic out here. Gemini 7, listening in on a three-way hookup, cuts in and says, "Call a policeman." Together, the capsules circle nearly twice around the globe on a 4-hour formation flight. The historic rendezvous of Gemini 7 and 6 is hailed by Wernher von Braun and other space officials as a giant step forward in the Apollo project designed to put a man on the moon. The launch vehicle for the Apollo spacecraft will be a 350-foot Saturn rocket that stands taller than the Capitol Dome in Washington. Total horsepower in the first stage is equal to a string of automobiles stretching across America. Space scientists working against the deadline set by the late President Kennedy hope to launch the Saturn and its Apollo spacecraft before the end of the 1960s. The booster rockets, after burning their 9 million pounds of thrust, are jettisoned and drop away. 3 astronauts will ride the mothership, called the command module, which circles the Earth in a parking orbit until it reaches a point where it can be fired toward the moon at 25,000 miles an hour. The Lunar Excursion Module, nicknamed the Landing Bug, is freed and turned 180 degrees until it is nose-to-nose with the command capsule. The 90,000-pound Apollo is on its way. Midway through the flight, calculations are taken and computations are made by the astronauts. The Apollo's course is set. A single engine inside the spacecraft is ignited about 50 miles above the moon, slowing the Apollo and allowing it to go into a lunar orbit. Two of the 3 astronauts now slip through the opening between the command module and the lunar bug. The 3rd astronaut remains behind to maintain communications with the Earth and the 2 lunar explorers. After examining the moon's surface for a landing place, the bug breaks away from the Apollo, enters its own orbit, and prepares for its trailblazing descent. As the astronauts near the surface, rockets fire to permit the capsule to hover above its landing spot. When the decision is made to set down, the landing legs are extended and the bug is lowered to its lunar landing place. The exploration team will remain on the moon for 7 days, gathering soil and rock samples and checking radiation. When the explorers are ready to leave, the upper portion of the bug is launched, leaving the lower half behind. The vehicle moves up to the orbital path of the Apollo, and the 2 capsules then rendezvous, just as Gemini's 7 and 6 did. The passengers transfer to the mothership, and all 3 astronauts prepare for the return trip. The Apollo is accelerated and its course set for the Earth re-entry path. Near the Earth, the instrument section is jettisoned, and the manned nose of the Apollo is turned to permit the heat-protected side to assume the proper re-entry attitude into the Earth's atmosphere. The Apollo flights of tomorrow will be, then, the legacy of the Gemini flights of today. Returning from the flights of the future to the missions of today, a recovery helicopter from the carrier Wasp locates the Gemini 6 capsule after a perfect splashdown in the Atlantic. Astronauts Schirra and Stafford open the hatch of their spacecraft as they wait to be picked up. Within half an hour, the carrier is on the scene and maneuvering into position for the recovery. And for the first time since the race for space began in 1957, a capsule recovery is seen live on television via the Early Bird satellite. Tens of millions of people in the United States and around the world are on the flight deck of the Wasp as the astronauts emerge from Gemini 6. For Wally Schirra, this is his second journey into space. In 1962, he flew 6 orbits. Old hand and new are happy to be home. 2 days later, the Wasp waits to welcome the second half of the rendezvous team, astronauts Frank Borman and James Lovell. After a record-breaking 330 hours in space, the astronauts are back on Earth, unshaven, a little stiff, but otherwise in seemingly good physical condition. The mission, the men, and their rendezvous in space have, in President Johnson's words, moved us one step higher on the stairway to the moon. After a quick medical checkup and change of clothes, the Space Twins received the first of a series of salutes from a grateful nation. There is also a close-up look at their Gemini 7 spacecraft, the sturdy little capsule that carried them 5.5 million miles, more than 10 times the distance to the moon and back. It seems incredible that 2 men could live for 2 weeks in the tiny spacecraft. But this they did, in the spirit that gave birth and greatness to the United States. The spirit symbolized by the men and achievements of Project Gemini, America's stepping stone to the moon.